And most of the people that I've met that struggled with addiction was this giant shame aspect of the idea of how could they be so weak, or how could they fall into this, because they never had pictured that life for themselves. No one plans on getting addicted to drugs, right? I've never met anybody. I was that kind of guy. I had fun, but there was usually, it was the reflective moments in between where I had to sit there and be with myself, that I would have to just admit to myself, like, I am unhappy.
Holics.com, in partnership with Heart Support and the Global Recovery Initiatives Foundation, is proud to present High Notes, a podcast about addiction and recovery in the music industry. I'm your host, James Shotwell. My guest this episode is Ryan Williams. Ryan is the frontman and founding member of Monarch, a modern rock band that is quickly taking the nation by storm. Ryan's journey began years ago when he was performing as part of another group known as Red Sun Rising. As Ryan recounts his experiences with that band and how it led him to recovery, we learn the story of a man who is fiercely focused on becoming the best version of himself and in helping others do the same. Ryan is a shining example of what is possible when we tackle our addictions and focus on our passion. When we connect over the phone, the very first thing I ask is how long he's been sober.
2 years and 4 years without a drink. Well, quitting drinking came first because everything came at once, and then I just didn't have a perfect ride into sobriety. I fell off for a couple weeks actually, and then kind of got it back together. The alcohol never came back into the picture though. So my last drink was almost 4 years. It was like 9/6/17.
Before Ryan tells me more about his sobriety, I wanted to know what happened that September. 4 years have passed since his decision to get sober, and Ryan still remembers what was happening in the weeks and months leading up to that fateful night.
I was in a band for a very long time called Red Sun Rising that I had we had a lot of success, and but that didn't come quickly. I mean, that was a 14-year adventure, right? When you're doing the day job, you have to find time to write and rehearse and perform and see if anybody will take you and play for free and drive 10 hours to play for no money, that sort of thing. You start to fall into these other patterns, I think, where it's like, there's like a lot of drinking and drugging. And then, that certainly didn't go away with success. In fact, I'd just say it became more accessible. But I think what happened for me was, at some point, I started to see the behaviors, right? I started to see probably in like 2016-ish. I was heading down a road where I was starting to do things I didn't like about myself, like things that I was just a little embarrassed by, things you do when you're drinking or partying, and then the next day you feel like you're apologizing. And, I wasn't good with my money. And so I decided to do what they call, white knuckling it, meaning I took absolutely no initiative into trying to solve the riddle of me, or like what makes me want so badly to drink or party, and why am I so into it. And I just decided to stop, just go dry. That's it. I cut everything out. And I did it for like a year and toured doing it that way. Kind of the inspiration of a great musician that we were opening for, the band where they were opening for. And I found there was a lot of these mentor type guys. It seems like a rite of passage with these bigger bands that, some guys make it, some guys handle it, and some guys implode. And there's guys that get through and they get to the other side. And I found a lot of those guys here and there on the road that were more than willing to tell me their story and offer advice. And this happened then. And I realized going into it that going into the initial stopping of the substances, that I wasn't happy doing that either. Like that things might have been a little better. Like my shirt was a little cleaner. I had a little more money in my pocket, and I was taking on more driving duties on the road, but everyone else got to go cut loose and get crazy. Why didn't I, and I felt a little alienated by it at first. I just went back to business as usual after about a year of that. I started back up in Europe, actually, which is a great place to start back up if you really want to do it right. And that didn't help my situation. I mean, I was having more fun in brief moments, but again, the trouble came back. I didn't like who I'd become. I was distancing myself from people, and I'd be on the road, and we wouldn't feel good all morning, but you get up and you do the show and you meet the fans and you smile. And we actually wrote a song about this, like everybody smiles in a picture, because there were times where I was doing some of the coolest things that you could ever imagine. Like, I know people would want to trade me places in some of these situations. I wanted to be there, right? I got to do great things, like open for bands like System of a Down, who are my heroes. But like, there were times, like in Europe, but there were times also where it like took everything we had to get back into the swing of things during the day because of the way we were the night before. I also found, for me, that because of the success, that people that that had the substances, like I got really into prescription painkillers for a while. That was a big problem for me. But one of the things that happened when I became successful and quote unquote famous guy, people didn't mind sharing or sending them or making sure I left with them. And I don't know that it affected my show as much as it affected my personal life. And I just was sick of being so unhappy. And I think I just started to do the deflective thing. I started to do the I don't care. You know what? I don't care. I don't care what happens to me or you or anybody else. And I started to put on this exterior, right? Don't tell me what to do. I don't care. If I die, I'm going to die doing this. And that was really, in hindsight, that was fear. That was trying to navigate this life that I had. Like, okay, I have my dream, right? My dream has come true, and I have a great family, and people are proud of me, and I'm the great songwriter I always wanted to be, but I'm miserable, right? And then I get these brief hits. Like, I love performing. I love the fans we've had. I love when people respond to my music, and that could carry me for a little bit. That was dope to me, and that was a drink to me. But after that, you walk off stage and the crowd goes home, and you got to cram in the bus and drive all night or whatever. It was really, really hard to recover, especially for somebody who's used to always getting the fix when they don't feel good. Now I felt as good as I have all day, and it feels better than sex to me. And then that's gone, and then I'm back to me. It's just me again, right? Even though I have people around me, it's me dealing with bad decisions and me dealing with my unhappiness. And I couldn't make heads or tails of why I had all the things that I wanted, but it turned out that wasn't what I needed. We went into recording another album. My head wasn't in the game. I didn't like a lot of the things around me, and there's things I won't go into detail about. I'm just going to talk about me. It wasn't easy being in that environment, in the situation that I was in, especially. I think I was really the only person that I even knew at the time that was sober that I could be around for long enough periods of time to have any, to rub off on each other, to spend time with each other. So I would fall back into these habits, and the more I did, it's like the angrier I got. So like I said, I had some song ideas. I don't know. My head wasn't in the game. And then we had this amazing producer come in, amazing. And he was just such a wonderful guy. And on day one, he and I just hit it off. He didn't know much about my situation, but he knew a little bit about it coming into the mix, and we talked, and I put my best foot forward, and I was on fire. I was a writing machine, right? I just cleaning up parts and writing these great guitar parts and lyrics. And I brought so much to the table. I just remember I was like, man, I forgot what it was like to like myself this much for something that I was doing, because there was only ever performing. And, that was such a quick fix. By the time we got to the post-production aspect of the record, I hadn't stopped using by any means. I was using more than ever. So I was a little bit, I'd say that I had days where I was certainly inconsistent, but I all of a sudden had this new, oh yeah, I forgot that I could write. I forgot that I was a good songwriter. I forgot that I could play guitar on this record. I forgot that I could do these things, because I've been on the road for 3 straight years, and most of that was kind of partying, and there was a lot of beautiful times, but there were some down times too. This producer pulled me aside, and he's like, you could be everything. You could be the whole package. You have so much to offer on this, but it's never going to happen. You're going to be just kind of a road bump. You're going to be the guy that people pile on. You're going to be a big question mark in your own life. You could do something about it. and he took me to a meeting in Los Angeles called Music Cares. And that is an amazing organization. And I've toured with bands where they paid for their surgery of the singer. I've paid for bands where they've had to, their home and owner's insurance didn't cover the destruction of their house, and we'd be opening for the band, and they would be telling me the story that Music Cares would come in and take care of it, right? Because it's kind of like, the artist sometimes doesn't have the insurance that comes with the everyday job. They put me in this amazing place, and I decided to get clean. I decided to actually do like the whole treatment. I decided to do, 60 days of rehab. And I went in, not knowing what to expect. Certainly I was reluctant. I didn't fight it though. I did it myself. I know so many people haven't had this experience, but I loved it. I all of the sudden I had an excuse to be just me for a little bit. I didn't have to play a show. I didn't have to take a picture. I didn't have to take business phone calls. We were mixing an album, at the time, but I only had to listen to that. And that excited me. I know we had music videos, but they were in LA. So I could cut out of this place and go do that. I just got to spend time with me and work on me and focus on me for a little bit. And it was this deep breath that I hadn't taken in 4 years or 5 years. It was this relief. I got to kind of focus on what made me to get to a point where I wasn't just partying at night and dealing with the next day, but the moment I didn't feel good in my own skin, which was almost all the time at that point, I found something to do, which was substance, right? I found something, some way, somehow. I had this anxiety that I couldn't identify through the cloud of drugs and alcohol, because those feelings are convoluted. I mean, there's no clear, concise path to what your problems are unless you clear your head up for a while. And even that took a month, but by day 2, I was really in a good place. And I fell in love with these people, and I just walked out different. I left that place with the rest I needed and the time I needed. And I started to identify a lot of things about myself that needed work. And I did that. And I became this person who sort of thrives and feeds on progress, which I wasn't before that. I was at one point in time before that, but there was a chunk of time where that guy didn't exist anymore, and that's really my journey, man. It was a lot. It was this really slow descent into not liking myself, and then all of a sudden having this moment of, oh yeah, that's why we're here. This is how I got here in the first place, was I earned this skill set. And then having somebody else who believed in me so much be like, dude, you could really do this. And it gave me just that enough motivation, that positive reinforcement to get in and take a look at what was going on behind the curtains. And I did. And yeah, that's my story.
As I'm listening to Ryan's story, I want to know more about the band and what it was like to be a part of this group while he's going through this. Was life on the road the party that the rock star lifestyle always promises to be, or was Ryan the outlier in the group? And when their dynamics began to shift, what was that like?
Let me start by saying, first of all, anybody who listens to this, I had a lot of fun. I met some of the most amazing people. I've had some of the funnest times of my whole life. There was just this other side, and a lot of people didn't see that. That was usually the guy by himself in the bunk at 11 a.m. trying to find the energy to get out of bed to go get sound checked and cleaned up. And, that guy was the guy that was constantly rethinking how he was living. It was a mixed bag. There was, I don't really want to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, there was a mixed bag. There was some support and some not support. There was some people that needed help and didn't get it, and some people that didn't. Some people just could. There were certain people around me in those periods of time that just had it together, and it was just a mixed bag. It was some of the most laughs, some of the biggest, best laughs of my life. And some of the most resentment and anger I ever felt was doing that project. But I certainly wish everybody well. Again, mixed bag, and that changes over time too. Some guys had better years than other guys. Some guys had better months than other guys. But yeah, generally, I think I was the only one really ever that constantly was kind of navigate the sobriety thing really, really harshly because, I think there's a difference between people that party on the road and then go home and don't. See, I didn't do that. Things got worse for me off the road because I knew on the road I had to keep it together enough to play a great show and do radio and meet fans. And I thought I did a pretty good job of that for the very most part. I don't know about the in between stuff some of the times, but again, I had great years and I had years that I would change if I could. Yeah, that's tough to answer. It's just a mixed bag of personalities. Everybody's going through their own thing and everybody's part of the same fight and struggle. But I think one of the biggest things for me was when I came home, I had more access than when I was on the road. And that the biggest problem for me because I knew exactly where to go and when to go. I didn't always have that on the road. And then there was times on the road too. It's like even when I was using that I would get in these routines where I'm back in the gym and I'm just, I'm kind of pulling it back. And I think anybody who's dealt with sobriety, it's no one thing, right? It's these hiccups, it's these moments of clarity and then falling off the cliff and then way down and then you're up for a little bit. And then finally something happens or doesn't that makes you change. And my thing wasn't so much one moment. It was just how I felt in general. I just wanted to be how I was when I was younger and beyond that. And I got there. I feel like I'm stronger than I've ever been, now, especially. It's all I do is get up and work on myself and how to be better family man, how to be a better songwriter, fighter, career driven person, better businessman, all that stuff. Where, when you're on drugs and drinking all the time, usually your focus is on how to get more drugs and drink.
I don't think enough people realize what an improbable idea being in a band really is. When you enter a group, you're choosing to put your faith and hopes and dreams and everything that you have in you into the actions, beliefs, faith, and dreams of other people. You have to hope that your big visions align over time, and that as you grow and evolve as individuals, the dynamic that first brought you together will remain in place. So when your lives begin to change, be that through sobriety or starting a family or getting married or just moving somewhere else, that can really change how a group operates.
It is. And the one thing everybody understood was that the show comes first, right? Always the show comes first. And everybody's had a night where they didn't follow through with that for one reason or another. But with that band, it was few and far between for everybody. I think it was a lot of focus, but certainly, everyone has their moments. And again, I'm trying to tiptoe around that topic because when it comes to this sort of thing, this is my story. And if those guys ever want to tell their own when it comes to that sort of thing, they can, you know?
Moving beyond the band, I wanted Ryan to tell me about his support system. He's been able to stay clean for 4 years and counting, and I have to imagine there are people in his corner cheering him on.
Yeah. So one guy, and I just don't know if I can say his name because he's in a bigger band, but he was awesome for me. He knows who he is. He plays in a really big band that we used to tour with. If you ever listen to this, he'd know exactly who he was. And he was the first one to kind of help me get started. But I think one of the biggest problems that I had, and in fact, I know it, is that I suffered in silence. And I know a lot of people do. And here's why. I still had a lot of pride. I mean, I wasn't dead. I wasn't even convinced I was addicted to anything, to be honest, for a very long time. And I'm sure most people aren't. I mean, I still had my dream in hand, right? I was touring the world and writing hit songs, and I was doing a pretty good job of it most of the time. And people were proud of me, and I'd come home and get on the radio, and then I'd spend time with my family, and everybody was doing okay. And so I always kind of put that I didn't want to put a hindrance on anybody else or bring anybody else down. So I did suffer in silence, and it was a big mistake because it would have been a lot easier had I have been more open and more forward from the very beginning about what it was that I was doing. But there's this stigma around drugs. I mean, they're illegal. People don't know how to react to it. And when you're in the throes of it, you don't even want to deal with it. You don't want to talk about that with anybody, right? So I actually tell people, I don't know if this is good advice or not, but people that reach out to me for advice that are sober, that are thinking about relapsing, usually we talk through it and that helps, right? We talk about how their life was and that sort of thing if that comes up. But I just always make them promise me that if they do it, they don't lie about it, because I think that saves people's lives. They know what you're taking. They know, somebody knows where you are and what you're doing. And I think if you can have open conversations about it, I think you could be more rational about what role it plays in your life in the first place. And again, huge stigma that is around drugs, and most of the people that I've met that struggled with addiction was this giant shame aspect of the idea of how could they be so weak, or how could they fall into this, because they never had pictured that life for themselves. No one plans on getting addicted to drugs, right? I've never met anybody. I was that kind of guy. I had fun, but it was the reflective moments in between where I had to sit there and be with myself, that I would have to just admit to myself, like, I am unhappy. Right. So, yeah, I definitely suffered in silence.
As Ryan explained earlier, when he started working with Music Cares, his sobriety turned a corner, and I wanted to know why that was. What was it about the program he was able to reach thanks to Music Cares that put him on the path he could remain on to this day?
Well, it was the first time I ever threw my hands up and surrendered to the situation. And, anybody who called me, hey, I'm in rehab, I have a drug problem. What? Yep. Oh, wow. Okay. Talk to you when you get out. I mean, before that, I didn't have a drug problem, right? I was a closeted drug user. So that was the first time I ever just said, this is it. I needed to deal with this. I needed to deal with my unhappiness. So that was a big start. And I mean, that's the big first step in any of the, NAs and all that. Right. As soon as I admitted that I had a problem, I went and tried to deal with it. But I also realized when I got enough time, and see that it bought me time. I was in a place where I wasn't going to use. Right. And I didn't have a hard time. I didn't kick anything. I wasn't withdrawing. I was the next day I was at the yoga place, and but I put a lot of effort in, and it was the first time in my entire life, clear headed, with no substances. I sat around with people and talked about what I was dealing with, and I heard other people's stories, and I wasn't ashamed of my own, because it's people. It was almost a competition, some of the crazy things that people do. There was a saying that if you threw all your problems in a pile, you'd want your problems back. Well, that's totally true. There's always somebody doing worse. And that takes some of the shame aspect out of what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you're an open book. And now I'm doing, podcasts, and, I guess still technically a public figure in a way, if you will, right? I'm not afraid to talk about that. I mean, it's just my journey. And if it helps some people, then it's worthwhile. And people get a better insight into who I am.
A lot of this episode has revolved around Ryan's experiences with his former band, but he's got a new group now, and I wanted to know how those experiences compared. Two of the members are from the band Wilson, who was previously known as one of the big party rock bands of the last decade.
Well, so the last couple of years I did sober, with my last band, and that was a different experience, and that was, that was really cool, for the most part, but the Wilson, the kings of the party. I have a little secret. I think Red Sun Rising out partied those guys, but they might disagree. But no, I mean, they're just great guys. They're professionals. I think that was I don't know if I'm even allowed to say it, but I don't know for sure because I wasn't on the road with them. But I think that was more of a shtick, where they are tons of fun. So what happened when Red Sun Rising ended, I was kind of, I have a son. I had a son at the time. Now I have a son and a daughter. But I was like, what am I going to do? Right? How do I have a career in music, but I don't leave all the time? And I got connected through that very same producer, actually, to start writing songs for other bands. And I was really into this idea until I had to, kind of work at everybody else's pace. And I was kind of overloaded. So when I saw that Wilson had ended around the same time, I reached out to James Lasku, the bassist. He's just such a killer. He's just one of the best bassists I've ever seen live, and one of the best I've ever played with. I mean, maybe the best. I'm going to say the best. And I sent him some ideas. I said, I have these songs, do you come down from Detroit for the weekend and just check it out? just see how it goes. This was about a year ago. And he did, and it went great, and we dropped it. We wrote a bunch of stuff, and then we just kind of let it go for a while. And then months later, it was like 5 months later, we were like, should we try this? Let's find a singer. And I made a post on Facebook, and I was really, really reluctant to do that. I guess there was a part of me that was like, man, if nobody responds to this, like that's that's the sign of the times, right? But it wasn't that way at all. It was hundreds of, when I woke up in the morning, I had hundreds of auditions, really great ones, a lot of great people, guys from other bands. And I found this kid out of Oklahoma, and I didn't believe him. He was so good, I didn't believe him. And I sent it to James, and James didn't believe him because he sent us a Queen song. We had him do it live on Zoom, and he was a killer. So we're like, we have to get this guy out. He loved the song ideas we had, and we had one more role to fill, which was the drummer. And James suggested Matt, who I also loved from touring. I mean, that's the thing about the Wilson guys, is they're not just a party band, but they're the band that everybody loves. I mean, we would tour with Seven Dust, and they had Wilson's shirt Wednesday, and it was just, they were that kind of band. They were the band's band. And not only that, those guys can play. So they came into town, and we started this thing, and here we are today. So the new band is called Monarch.
As my time with Ryan begins to wind down, I want to know about the present day. Does he experience any type of craving or temptation in relation to his former life? And if so, what are those experiences like?
The last time I had a craving to use, maybe yesterday. I mean, I think about, I miss drinking and stuff. I might, I think about it sometimes, but the thought to actually follow through with it has not really happened. Too many great things going for me right now. There's a lot on the line. I've already had the bad reminder of how things go when Ryan doesn't keep up with himself, So, I think I'll probably always think about what would it be like to drink again and that sort of thing. I mean, it happens, but yeah, no real interest in following through. Things are just going way too great at the moment.
Now that Ryan's in a better place, I'm curious if he's ever thought about what could have been. If it's possible that all of this could have been avoided because of a different choice he made or an intervention from somebody else. But I get the feeling that's not the case.
I don't know if anything would have stopped me at that point. I definitely needed the work, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that about myself. I mean, I've always been a pretty happy-go-lucky, pretty calm, pretty confident guy. I mean, a lot of it's 2020 though, like hindsight's 2020. A lot of it in hindsight, I didn't realize like I had some social anxiety issues, or, I maybe some insecurities about this or that. I think though, and this is controversial, but there's this new concept that, like, what if drugs were legal? Right? Like, what if all drugs were legal and grown adults could make the decision about whether or not they could buy them, and they could buy them safely from the government? Would that be different? I think about that because that's been a topic of a lot of like different podcasts and things that I listen to. And I think there's a good point there somehow. I know that, again, very controversial, but what if you didn't have to get these risky, what's it called, fentanyl-laden drugs from people that were sketchy, and you didn't have to blow your paycheck on it, and you didn't have to hide it? Like, what if you were addicted to Percocet, but you could like go to the store, fill out the form, buy the bottle, and then take it home, and then the stigma wasn't there? So like, this is where the honesty aspects comes in. Like, what if things were so different that you could just say to the people around you, I think I have a problem with this. I take these all the time, and then when I don't have them, I'm miserable. And what if you could have that conversation? What if it wasn't this thing you had to hide? I think that's a fascinating idea, and I know it's controversial, and I'm not sure how you roll something like that out. I don't know. I think I'll tell you what. I'm not. I don't wish for a second that I hadn't gone through what I've gone through. I'm really happy with who I am. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a songwriter. I'm a father, and I'm good at it. I'm a fighter. I fight now. I love that. I train mixed martial arts. I'm good in relationships now, and I do it with a sort of confidence that I don't think I ever had before. And when you have that sort of confidence, you can think rationally and you can be authentic. I had to earn that through I had to get it. I had to find that out the hard way. And I'm still working. I work on me all the time, but I became a person who, feeds off of progress. And I think as confident and as happy as I was once in my life, I don't know that I had this kind of drive and this kind of strength and this kind of courage. And it gets better every day. So I wouldn't change anything. But as far as deterrence, I mean, I could speculate all day.
Now that Monarch has music in the world, Ryan is once again a public figure, and his fans look to him for guidance. We don't believe in giving advice on this show, but we do believe in the power of suggestion. So when fans come to Ryan and ask about his experiences and how they can make better choices in their own lives, this is what Ryan will suggest.
My suggestion for people that want to get their life together is to do it, is to suck it up and commit. But you're going to have to do that with some openness and some honesty. Your first step is really going to be admitting to yourself that you have a problem and to other people. And you're going to have to surrender to the fact that you don't know how to do that better than a lot of people. There's people that can teach you or get you on the right path, but you're not the one to do it because you are the problem, and you need somebody who isn't the problem to help you deal with it. So, if you want help, my advice is to seek it and to start with some honesty before, you get yourself in a situation where you can't be. And it's worth it on the other end. All of these mountains that you've built up in your head are not mountains at all. And you'll find that out on the other side.
You can tell by listening to him that Ryan has spent a lot of time reflecting on his journey. He doesn't take the path he's traveled lightly. He's thought about every action, every mistake, and every decision that he's made, and really considered the ramifications of those choices. I hope that we can all do more of that moving forward, not just in relation to our vices, but into how we treat one another and how we treat ourselves. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek help. The High Notes team is here for you, and we are happy to provide resources to get you on the path to recovery. As always, I'm your host, James Shotwell. High Notes is a production of Holics.com. This episode was edited by Landon Defever, with production assistance from Laura Hardy and additional marketing support from Liam Delmonico. Our theme song was written and recorded by the band You, Me, and Everyone We Know. Our artwork was made by the great Nick Ferran. If you'd like to connect with High Notes, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram by looking up High Notes Pod. That's High Notes Pod. There are more episodes coming soon, but if you need a fix right now, there are more than 30 episodes available at your fingertips on every podcast platform, including YouTube. Until I talk to you again, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it.